Delaware has less than 1 million residents, but it's home to over 2 million companies. It's where Amazon, Google, Walmart, and almost 70% of the Fortune 500 companies are legally incorporated. And this is all by design. For decades, Delaware has literally engineered its rise to become the corporate capital of America. But now that crown is under threat. Companies should get the hell out of Delaware. That's what Elon Musk wrote on X. And he pulled Tesla and SpaceX out of Delaware, calling for what some are calling Dexit. And now rival states like Nevada, Texas, and Florida are circling, offering looser rules and lower taxes. So how did Delaware build this empire, and why are companies starting to look elsewhere? Okay, first I need to clarify something, because aren't most companies headquartered in like California or New York? Yes, headquarters are where a company actually runs its business, where the main offices are, where employees sit, and where executives are often based. But being incorporated is about the legal address, where the company lives on paper for taxes, governance, and lawsuits. And that's why Nvidia works out of California but legally lives in Delaware. And California is home to some of the world's biggest companies, Apple, Google, Meta, and of course Nvidia. But here's the twist. While they're headquartered in California, most of them aren't incorporated there. Instead, the majority of US public companies choose Delaware. So why? Well, California corporate law is seen as less flexible and more protective of shareholders than of executives and boards. I mean, California requires majority approval for certain mergers and mandates cumulative voting for directors. And these are rules that give minority shareholders more power, but make corporate governance more complex. Delaware, on the other hand, gives boards wide discretion, faster courts, and a massive library of case law that makes outcomes more predictable. Now, still, some companies do incorporate in California, especially smaller firms that operate only within the state. But California corporations are subject to state income tax, and unlike Delaware, they can't avoid it by earning money elsewhere. They also face higher disclosure requirements. So Nvidia is such a classic case here. The company was founded in California in 1993 and remains headquartered in Santa Clara, but like nearly every major tech company, being incorporated in Delaware makes raising capital easier. In fact, venture capitalists and Wall Street investors expect Delaware structures. So while California is the beating heart of American tech, it's actually Delaware that remains the legal home for Silicon Valley giants. But hold on, doesn't this mean then that California is missing out on potentially billions of dollars in fees that Delaware brings in every year? How did such a tiny state pull all of this off? All right, quick history lesson. The story begins in the early 1900s. Back then, New Jersey was the corporate capital. Standard Oil, US Steel, and the giants of the Gilded Age all incorporated there. It was 1913 when New Jersey Governor Woodrow Wilson, yes, the same Wilson who would later become US president, pushed through the strict reforms to crack down on monopolies. Corporations panicked, and Delaware saw the opportunity. Just across the river in 1899, it had quietly passed the Delaware General Corporation Law. This offered flexible rules and a friendly legal environment. When New Jersey turned hostile, Delaware opened its doors wide, and within years, corporations were flooding in. And Delaware built infrastructure to actually keep these companies. The Court of Chancery became the jewel of the system. It was a special business court with no juries, only expert judges, deciding cases quickly and consistently. Over time, that court built up a massive body of corporate law, giving companies and investors predictable outcomes. And in the world of business, predictability is everything. Now add to that, no state sales tax, no inheritance tax for non-residents, and no state corporate income tax on revenue earned outside Delaware, and the package becomes totally irresistible. I mean, you'd be an idiot not to incorporate there. So by the late 20th century, Delaware wasn't just popular, it was dominant. And today, it collects more than $2 billion a year in corporate fees, franchise taxes, and it funds nearly a third of the state budget. So now ask today, why would a startup in California or a giant in New York pick Delaware instead of their home state? And the answer is simple. Investors expect it. Venture capital firms often insist that startups incorporate in Delaware before they even invest. And Wall Street banks and IPO lawyers prefer it as well. In fact, nearly 80% of American IPOs in 2022 were Delaware companies. Quick break to thank today's sponsor, Immunoprecise Antibodies. IPA is a NASDAQ-listed biotech company whose stock has surged from about 27 cents to nearly $3 this year. They're focusing on using AI in drug discovery. And recently they announced progress on an AI-discovered dengue vaccine moving into preclinical testing. And they've streamlined their operations operations in Europe to double down on AI innovation. On top of that, they just posted record quarterly revenue and earnings, showing not just momentum in the lab, but in their business too. So it's an exciting time for ImmunoPrecise. If you're curious, check out ticker IPA and do your own research. This is not financial advice, purely informational. And now back to the video. There's another thing here too. Delaware offers something close to allowing you to be anonymous. I mean, if you set up an LLC there, you don't even need to disclose the owners. Only officers and directors have to be listed, making Delaware a magnet not only for household names like Apple and Walmart, but also for shell companies and holding firms from all over the world. So there's a bunch of perks here, right? There's investor trust, legal predictability, tax advantages, and now privacy. And that's all what has kept Delaware on top for over a century. But now, cracks are appearing, starting with the Elon Musk effect. So the turning point came in 2024 when Delaware's Court of Chancery struck down Elon Musk's $55 billion Tesla pay package, of course, the largest in corporate history. And Musk didn't just lose in court and walk away, he declared war. He started calling Delaware a corporate trap and urged businesses to leave. Then he moved Tesla and SpaceX out, reincorporating in Texas. And that single move sent shockwaves through corporate America. Because if Elon Musk, one of the world's richest men and most powerful people in business, is ditching Delaware, should others ditch Delaware as well? I mean, suddenly Delaware's greatest asset, its trusted courts, kind of looked like a liability. Okay, so where are companies going instead? Well, there are 3 states here that are standing out. There's Nevada, Texas, and Florida. Nevada has actually been the most aggressive challenger. It markets itself as Delaware without the rules. No corporate income tax, no franchise tax on income, and no capital gains tax. Unlike Delaware, Nevada doesn't require companies to disclose their offices or directors, making it even more private. But critics call that a haven for shady shell companies. But for businesses that want secrecy or light regulation, Nevada does look appealing. Then there's Texas. So it's the second largest economy in the US, and Texas offers not just tax perks like no personal income tax, but also proximity to some booming industries like tech, manufacturing, and energy. Texas announced the creation of its own business courts to rival Delaware's Court of Chancery. Its governor even floated plans for a Texas-based stock exchange aiming to break Wall Street's dominance. And when Elon Musk pulled Tesla and SpaceX out of Delaware, Texas was his first stop. And that set a precedent that other CEOs could potentially follow. And then there's Florida. It's also trying to win some attention here. So just like Nevada, Florida also has no state income tax, but it also leans on its rapid growth and political branding as a business-friendly state. Trump Media moved its incorporation to Florida, aligning with the state's push to position itself as the headquarters for right-leaning companies and startups that distrust Delaware's more traditional corporate culture. So these states are pretty much offering what Delaware has always promised: favorable laws and low taxes, but with some fresh branding and in some cases even looser oversight. Now, of course, Delaware is fighting back. Its legislature rushed through reforms to reassure companies, streamlining chancery procedures, tweaking shareholder rules, and updating the corporate code. Even that response triggered its own criticism. Some argued that by bending too quickly to corporate pressure, Delaware actually undermines the independence of its courts, and that's the very thing that made it attractive in the first place. See, this tension is Delaware's paradox. Its dominance was built on a century of consistent, impartial rulings, but in a hyper-competitive era where Elon Musk goes on X and posts things, and when Texas or Nevada can rewrite their laws overnight, Delaware risks looking slow, or worse, maybe too political. Okay, you might be thinking, does it really matter where a company files paperwork? And the answer is actually yes, because corporate law shapes how businesses operate, how shareholders are protected, and how executives are held accountable. Delaware's corporate empire funds a third of the state budget, and if companies flee, Delaware will face a fiscal crisis. And on the flip side, states like Texas and Nevada stand to gain prestige, revenue, and influence. And there's a deeper risk here. If corporate law fragments across multiple states, we could lose the predictability that made American business so strong. Investors could face more uncertainty, shareholders could lose protections, and executives could gain more freedom to push through. So where does that leave us now? Well, for now, Delaware is still the king. More than 2/3 of the Fortune 500s remain incorporated in the state. Its courts are still the gold standard, and its laws are still the most trusted by investors. But history shows that monopolies don't last forever, and just as Delaware once stole the crown from New Jersey, will Texas, Nevada, or Florida be next? The question now isn't whether Delaware will survive, because it will, but the question becomes whether it can stay the undisputed champion, or will Elon Musk's actions be the beginning of the end for Delaware? Let me know what you think below, and to help support this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.